Follow Famous and Gravy on the Wondery app or wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen to Famous and Gravy early and ad-free now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify.
Hi, who here loves when their nails are perfectly done? Me. I'm Sarah Gibson Tuttle, and I started Olive in June because, let's be real, we all deserve to have gorgeous nails, but who wants to spend a fortune or half their day at the salon? And that's why I created the Mani system, so you can have that salon-perfect manicure right at home. And guess what? The best part? Each mani only costs $2. Yep, you heard me, $2. No more $30, $40, $50 salon trips that eat up your day. Now you can paint your nails whenever you want, wherever you want. And trust me, you're going to be obsessed with your nails and everyone is going to ask you, where did you get your nails done? And here's a little something extra. Head over to oliveandjune.com and get 20% off your first Mani system with code FRESHMANI20 at oliveandjune.com/freshmani20. That's code FRESHMANI20 for 20% off at oliveandjune.com/freshmani20. You're all set for a nail glow up. Let's get those nails looking fab, shall we?
If you're an NBA or WNBA fan who loves keeping up with pop culture, you've got to check out the Six Trophies podcast, presented by Aura. In this weekly basketball show, hosts Jason Concepcion and Shea Serrano comb through the spiciest news from the past week, handing out 6 pop culture-themed trophies to 6 basketball-related activities. Like the 6 Cents I See Dead People trophy, given to the player with the biggest comeback of the week. Or the Denzel Washington in Training Day trophy for the most dominant performance of the week. And if upping your personal performance is on your mind, our sponsor Aura can help with that. Aura Ring gives you personalized updates about your sleep, stress, activity, recovery, and more, all from a sleek smart ring. So you can win the Hacking Your Life Better Than Bradley Cooper and Limitless trophy. Check out 6 Trophies, presented by Aura, wherever you get your podcasts.
Famous and Gravy listeners, Michael Osborne here. I've got 2 things to say before we start today's episode. First, we could really use your help growing the show, and there's a very simple thing you can do. Leave a review for Famous and Gravy on Apple Podcasts. If you're listening on Apple, you just scroll down on our show page, tap the stars, and write a few words. These reviews help feed Apple's algorithm and help new listeners to find our show. The second thing is, if you yourself are interested in starting your own podcast and you want to learn about how we built Famous and Gravy, we would love to have a conversation. Our email, as always, is hello@famousandgravy.com. So 2 things. Please write a review, and if you're fantasizing about your own show, please reach out. That's it. Thanks again. Let's get to it.
This is Famous and Gravy, biographies from a different point of view. To participate in our opening quiz, email us at hello@famousandgravy.com. Now, here's the quiz to reveal today's dead celebrity.
This person died 2011, age 58. His colleagues said he had charisma and a knack for spontaneity.
Charisma and a knack, that's a lot of people.
Robin Williams?
Not Robin Williams. In the mid-1970s, he played minor league baseball for about 4 years in the St. Louis Cardinals and Cincinnati Reds organizations, mainly as an outfielder.
Oh, not my category. Not Michael Jordan?
Pat Tillman?
See, I know you already did Bob Uecker.
We actually didn't.
Oh, okay, well, Bob Uecker?
Not Bob Uecker, but good guess. He acted in the 2002 movie Spider-Man, appeared on sitcoms like Mad About You, and lent his scratchy baritone to video games and cartoons, including Family Guy and King of the Hill.
Was he on 21 Jump Street?
It's not Joe Torre.
He's got a Ooh, nope, not Harvey Firestein.
Not Harvey.
No.
Were you saying Harvey Weinstein? Is that it? Or
No. He's got that really scratchy New York.
Oh, yes. Not him. He would wear brightly colored cowboy hats and outfits dripping with fringe.
Randy Macho Man Savage.
Randy Macho Man Savage.
Randy Macho Man Savage.
Today's dead celebrity is Randy Macho Man Savage.
Oh, no shit. Awesome.
I am the cream in the World Wrestling Federation. The cream, yeah. The cream of the crop. And there is no one that does it better than the Macho Man Randy Savage.
Welcome to Famous and Gravy. I'm Michael Osborne.
And I'm Steve Prada.
And on this show, we choose a famous figure who died in the 21st century, and we take a totally different approach to their biography. What didn't we know? What could we not see clearly? And what does a celebrity's life story teach us about ourselves? Today, Macho Man Randy Savage died 2011, age 58. Okay, so I've invited my friend Steve Prada onto the show. Steve works in cyber security. He and I have become good friends over the past few years, and listeners can't see this, but I'm going to pay you an awkward compliment. You're a very fit man. Yeah, well, you are. You're a bit of an exercise guy. But here's something I love about you. You are also a very emotionally aware dude. And I feel like you and I have actually had some really good conversations about masculinity and how we understand that today. So I want to start off by asking you, what was your relationship to pro wrestling growing up?
I loved watching it as a kid, you know, from the ages of about 6 or 7 until I even watched through high school.
Did you? Okay,
truth.
you went further than I did.
So there were some friends of mine and I that would buy the pay-per-view events in
Yes,
high school.
yes.
And when I was in high school, that was the time of Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah.
The Rock was a big name then.
Right.
And yeah, I've always...
So you
it's
were into
fascinating.
it. You were into
it's always
you're
been
a sports
fascinating.
guy
to me.
too,
Yeah,
right?
I love sports. I love athletics,
Yeah.
and the stuff that these guys do, I don't think they get nearly the amount of credit that they deserve as athletes. Like what they're doing, it's extremely difficult, and you have to be really coordinated and also mentally sharp to be able to have that dance in front of thousands of people. I mean, it's impressive.
I think people think it is just bodybuilding, and it's much more than just bodybuilding. Or non-fans may mistake it as that, and also the sort of circus cartoonish aspects. When I grew up, the Ultimate Warrior was kind of the big figure. In as much as I ever had a guy, he was my guy. But the Macho Man was a fixture of my youth. And I was not somebody who actually grew up loving pro wrestling. I grew up with friends who did, and they explained it to me. And really the question was always, is this a good guy or a bad guy? And that changed.
It changed a lot. I mean, it's a fascinating thing to dive into. So before coming and doing the episode, I had told a couple of people, hey, I'm going to be doing this podcast. I'm really excited about it. Do you know Macho Man? And none of these people I was asking watched wrestling as a kid.
Yes.
But as soon as I said Macho Man,
they did.
They knew exactly who I was talking about.
He's a little bit beyond the sport.
He's beyond the sport. So people know Hulk Hogan and who that is, but it's the same type of deal.
I think that's going to be a good segue into our first category. Category 1, grading the first line of their obituary. Randy Savage, who with his trademark sunglasses, bandanas, and raspy voice was one of the most recognizable professional wrestlers of the 1980s and 90s as the character Macho Man, died on Friday in a one-car accident in Pinellas County, Florida. He was 58. You have a face.
I have a face. I have opinions. I have opinions.
Tell me about your opinion.
I was slightly let down. There is way more going on with Macho Man than raspy voice, sunglasses, and bandana. One of the words I would have expected to see is a word like outrageous. Macho Man was outrageous.
Yeah,
he
over
was,
the top or something.
Was just
or larger
outrageous.
than life character.
Larger than life.
Even for professional wrestling, right?
I would have loved to see more adjectives like boisterous, magnetizing, polarizing. He was a great heel. I mean, you hated him and loved him at the same time.
Yeah.
He was a showman.
Yes.
And he was more than a professional wrestler. The guy was a cultural icon.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. I agree with that there's a lot more available to describe this guy. I do think that the audience is people who mostly don't give a rat's ass about professional wrestling. That said, he did go beyond the sport. This is to your point a minute ago. So the only way they capture that idea that he's sort of more than wrestling is most recognizable, which is pretty lame as a sort of, as a way of describing it. I'll tell you something that's not in here that I think actually might needed to have been. Slim Jim.
Slim Jim.
I always like to keep my favorite snack handy. Need a little excitement? Step into a Slim Jim. Oh, yeah.
People absolutely remember him for the Slim Jim commercial. And he pioneered a whole lot of commercial opportunity for other wrestlers because of his success with that brand. Like to this day, if people can't remember him and you said Slim Jim, they might.
I have bought Slim Jims because of Macho Man Randy Savage.
Most of America has, yes.
And whenever I'm on a road trip and I'm walking into gas stations, hopping, if I see Slim Jim, I think of Randy Savage.
Yeah,
immediately.
Totally. So is that first line of the obit territory? I don't know, but I actually think there's a case that could have been included, but only as a symbol of larger fame. Because I do think that he was somebody, as you said, Hogan is king at this time. In the 80s and 90s, there's no question he's the biggest. Andre the Giant is in there too, certainly in the 80s. Macho Man Randy Savage belongs in that category. Like he is...
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I will say, to their credit, trademark sunglasses, I think that's actually pretty good. His sunglasses were never the same, and he's always wearing them. And raspy voice had to get in there.
Raspy voice for sure. What they did not mention here, his outfits were out of control. I think he's even more known for his hats than he is for bandanas. I would have thrown hats because he had all those custom cowboy hats.
100%. And this is going to come up later. All right. You know what? I do think that it's hard to read this without immediately thinking the author of this did not care for professional wrestling.
This was not a fan.
This guy's not a fan
of wrestling.
And this guy, or even an appreciator on some level, which, okay,
nothing
fine.
wrong with that. I get it.
Yeah, I do get it. But it is a little disappointing.
Yeah, Macho Man deserved more.
All right, so I'm going to go 7. And the reason is because I do think it is hard to make a case to people who don't care about wrestling that this is somebody who you should care about. I do think that they paint a visual. I'm somewhere between a 6 and a 7 as I'm talking this out. I wish they had done more. However, had they done more, it would have been kind of playing into the theatrics of professional wrestling in a way that might have turned off readers who I do want to take more in. So I'm going to give it 6.6, but I'm going to round up to 7.
So my score was a 6.
Okay.
But as I was talking through,
you were wanting to drop
it
down.
I was wanting to drop it.
Yeah.
I was ready to go.
You know what? If you go 5, I'll go 6. You want to just make a compromise?
I'm on 5.
All right.
I'm good with 5.
All right. I'll drop mine to 6.4. All right. Category 2, 5 things I love about you. Here, Steve and I will develop a list of 5 things that offer a different angle on who this person was and how they lived. I'd like you to kick us off, Steve.
Okay. So my first thing was his own man. Randy Savage was his own man. He put in a lot of time and effort into carefully curating who Randy Savage was going to be in the ring.
Yeah.
And it started off as Randy Poffo, and then it was Randy Savage, and then it was Macho Man Randy Savage. He was very conscious about the decisions he was making about this character that he was going to bring into the ring.
He deliberately constructs this.
It was very deliberate.
Yeah.
His commitment to that character is incredible.
People remark on this, that the guy you see on camera is the same guy off stage and outside the camera. But one thing that is really striking, I really like this, I got to say, as a thing number 1, because he was not Randy Savage growing up. Like the way people describe him in his childhood and in his adolescence and into his early adulthood, you would not have guessed that this would be who he becomes.
No, people say that he kept to himself.
He's like a quiet guy.
Relatively quiet. He was extremely athletic, was friends with people, but he didn't let a ton of people in. He wasn't loud. He wasn't outgoing.
Yeah. I mean, I think we need to explain a little bit of his backstory here. So his dad was a professional wrestler in the 40s and 50s. And you and I both read this biography by John Finkel, and it starts off with his dad in this, what was it, like a sit-ups contest?
Sit-ups contest. He did something like 6,000 sit-ups.
He broke a world record here, right?
They talk about him chafing on his abdomen and ass.
Right.
To get this bleeding.
Right.
Doing sit-ups.
To win a sit-ups. So Randy Savage's father is a professional wrestler.
He's a professional lunatic.
He's a professional lunatic. But the way his dad and his family are described, that was not forced upon him and his brother. What there was a household of fitness. They had they built up gym and, but what Randy Savage loved, or Randy Poffo loved before he became Randy Savage, was baseball. This I did not know about him.
This was Randy Pofo's purpose. As a young adolescent, teen, baseball, single focus.
Totally.
This was his dream.
He made it pretty close.
He was in the minor leagues for a couple of teams, and he did well. If he had not have injured his shoulder in that collision at home plate, things might have turned out differently. It's an interesting thread to pull on. Things could have been different, you know?
When you look at pictures of him from that age, though, I mean, he's pretty skinny.
Lanky, sinewy, strong, but
he's not jacked.
No.
But then, and I think this is to your point about he was his own man, that the wrestling personality didn't emerge until the baseball dream died. And then he began to construct this character. And then he lived that character with full commitment for the second half of his life.
The development of Randy Savage but what I found interesting, even during his commitment to baseball, there was always a little bit of a wrestling tick in the back of his mind because he started wrestling professionally while he was still in the minors. He would wear a mask and go on stage, and his teammates would come after the games in their uniforms and be like, hey, we got to go see Randy. He's going to be wrestling tonight.
I remember that. Yeah. So that dream, that seed must have been planted.
It was always there. And when you grow up around a sport like he did.
You have to imagine. What I hear in that as a kind of famous and gravy theme, I like that he chose himself. Right? I think that we are always constructing who we are going to be and the characters we play on the stage of life. And in a very literal and exaggerated way, that's what Randy Savage did. He decided to be what sounded to me like a character that you would not have seen him becoming had you known him before his wrestling career.
Macho Man Randy Savage was premeditated,
right?
Which is incredible.
And it's a full-on commitment after that. Now, I don't want to do the things he did with my life necessarily, but I do like the idea that he chose his own destiny. It's nice to see an example like that because it reminds us of our own agency and our own power and our own possibility. We don't have to go to the same extremes that he did and went to, but that does tell you something about, with a certain level of determination and commitment, who you can be.
It's inspiring.
Exactly.
He had an awful set of circumstances dealt his way, which basically ruined his childhood dream.
Yeah.
And he took that and said, okay, you know what? It's time to remake, rebuild, and he did it.
Let's save that because it gets into my thing number 2. All right, thing number 2 I had freakishly athletic. All right, so we're starting to tread on this territory a second ago. One thing that's really striking about his baseball journey, what people will say is that he was very good, and if you could get into the pros based on determination and grit and commitment, he would have been there. But he did not have the raw talent. But as a example of his determination, one of the most striking stories is that you mentioned this a second ago. He dislocates his shoulder or something. He injures his shoulder.
Injures his shoulder. Yeah.
And what he decides to do at that moment is become ambidextrous and say, all right, if I can't do it with my right arm, I'll do it with my left. And he had some insane workout of like throwing the ball with his left arm thousands of times a day to practice it.
He did everything with his left hand. He ate cereal with his left hand.
Right.
He
opened doors. He drove the car.
For all I know, he wiped his ass with his left hand. Like he did everything.
Sure he did.
With his left hand.
And
it took him, I think it was like 8 months is what it said.
See, isn't that insane? Because think of the risk of injury. You know, I know how to throw a baseball with my right arm, but that's not just my arm. That's my whole body. That's how I step into it. That's how I pivot my hips. That's how I rotate my shoulders. You've got to learn all of that on the other side. And he did it to a level where he could actually play in the minor leagues and almost made the cut to the majors with his other arm. That is insane.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
But it speaks to how I don't think pro wrestlers get nearly the amount of credit for how athletic they actually are. These aren't just big dudes they are athletic.
I think that there's also, so I guess we're really just talking about the body. I do think we should pause here for a second. One thing that the biography did not deal with and the documentaries don't deal with quite enough is steroid use. It is actually hard to verify that other than the obvious. His body is bulging and it seems like...
I didn't come across any direct evidence or quotes that said, I saw him do X. No.
In the documentary, his girlfriend, Gorgeous George, in the
they said
she said she saw him using steroids, but it's all pretty clandestine. We don't know.
Well, so when people hear steroids, they immediately think size, gains, all that kind of stuff.
Lean muscle. Yeah.
One of the most important effects of steroids is actually muscle recovery. So it will speed up how fast your body is able to recover from extreme exertion.
Are you speaking for? I mean, you've never had problems with steroids, have you?
I have not taken steroids. No, I know a number of folks who have.
Okay.
And basically, so if you go to the gym on Monday and you knock out a number of deadlifts and squats, and you go home, you eat a ton, you sleep, you might not want to do that workout again without steroids for another week. But maybe on Wednesday, your body is already recovered and ready for more reps, more sets. So these guys are putting their bodies through the ringer, and it makes a lot of sense to hear folks talk about Randy Savage and his steroid use later in his career, because as you get older, your body does not recover as fast.
Right.
So it's almost less about size and more about survival.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I had not really thought much about steroids in a long time, because we tend to hear them invoked in conversations around performance enhancement and like cheating in sports or something. But I hadn't really thought of them with the filter of drugs of abuse and what that can do to you physically and psychologically. So I went down a little bit of a research rabbit hole. Not what are the addictive risks around steroids? And there are things like it may make it hard for certain hormones to rebound, and it can lead to depression, and that can create a kind of psychological addiction. Your body will rebel.
People get addicted to how they make you look.
Right. And there's body dysmorphia that can kind of come up. And
don't get me wrong, diet is king. Diet is extremely important. But if you're on steroids, you could probably eat a couple bags of Doritos and you'd still look like an Adonis.
I guess thing is, and I want to move on from number 2, the reason I really wanted to talk about this now is that steroids or no steroids, Randy Savage was freakishly athletic, and he had a commitment to fitness that is actually something I love about him. So freakishly athletic. All right, what'd you have for thing number 3?
I titled this one Doogie Howser. The reason I titled it Doogie Howser is in reading about his upbringing and his lifestyle, this was someone that was a student of the sport of wrestling.
Yes.
This is someone that was around people. He was lucky enough to be in a family of wrestlers. His father, Angelo, wrestled very heavily in the 50s and 60s.
And his younger brother.
And his younger brother was Randy's tag team partner for in the beginning part of Randy's career. I think he went by the Professor?
Or the Genius. I think.
Or the Genius, that's what it was.
Yeah.
But as a kid, he soaked it up. He had access to these early great wrestlers like Nature Boy Buddy Rogers and Cowboy Bob Ellis, who was a Texan.
Yeah.
Hans Schmidt, Vern Gagne, who was an ex-Navy SEAL.
Well, and there's one guy in there who he modeled his voice after.
Yes.
Pampero Firpo, the wild bull of the Pampas.
So he was a student of the sport. He soaked it all in. He paid attention to what these folks were doing. And it shows in his career. So one of his first big WrestleManias, WrestleMania 3.
Yeah, this is a watershed moment in wrestling history. This is
looked at as quite possibly one of the most famous matches in WWF history.
Planted that knee right into the high cervical vertebrae area of the back.
You know what that was? Steamboat went to the well once too often.
I have to agree with you.
Yep. He got
over the top rope. Look at the Dragon. Held on to the top rope and pulled himself back in and got clotheslined. Oh.
You got to get up pretty early in the morning to outsmart the Macho Man.
Ricky Steamboat, and he had this match. They spent an inordinate amount of time and legal pads documenting step by step. I think it got up to like 160 or 180 steps of the match.
Yes.
And they would quiz each other until you could be like,
where they knew every single move.
I just did move number 41.
Yeah.
What happens next?
Right.
And it turned out to be one of the most beautifully choreographed wrestling matches ever.
I think people who don't follow wrestling may not realize that while, yes, there is a lot of scripting and planning and predetermination about outcomes, that level of detail and scripting on a given match does not happen. And to your point, this is something that also comes out. Like he was almost annoying with other wrestlers about like, we need to talk through the plan, right?
Yeah, a lot of folks wanted to ad lib.
Yeah.
And Randy was like, we got to make this.
But I think what I also like about that student of the sport idea is that I feel like he had an understanding of the culture and the entertainment value. And maybe to put it in something that I think about a lot and relate to, he cares about his audience. Like he has an idea of how the crowd is not just watching what's happening, but is like caught up in the story of what's happening. And that's not just an athletic point, that's a culture point, right? He understood the culture as a student of wrestling.
100%. He understood what would play with the crowd, what wouldn't play with the crowd.
Yeah.
And I think, back to the Doogie Howser point, like, if you're a kid and around this stuff, you can't help but soak it up and become somewhat of a wrestling nerd.
Yeah. But let me say this. Let me pay you another compliment. You know, I have had conversations with you about cybersecurity. I'm not a cybersecurity guy. I don't think about this stuff, but I do like it when people have found their thing and are really, really into their thing.
They're passionate about it.
And they're students of their thing. And I feel like that's something, again, this is like to turn it back on us, to be a student of your chosen destiny and to nerd out on it. I want that for myself. I want that for everybody.
I'm drawn to people like that.
100%.
It's energizing to see someone light up when they talk about the thing they love.
Exactly.
I love
that's a
talking
great
with
way of
people
putting it. Yeah, me
about
too.
the thing they love.
Beautiful. All right, number 4. This is kind of a quick one. I just want to spend a minute on it. Voice consciousness. Okay. I mean, the thing it's called out in the first line of his obit, it's the thing people most remember him for. Everybody wants to do a Randy Savage impersonation. Oh yeah. And the way he says, yeah, is affirmative. And I also like we used the word deliberate earlier. I like the deliberative nature of his cadence. I like that you can see him choosing his words and bringing a certain kind of intensity to it.
I saw a woman psychiatrist, and she said I was OCD, one cool dude, and she understands the way I think right now, and everything's copacetic, everybody's happy.
The voice for me, as somebody who loves audio and podcasts, the voice is an instrument, and he built his own instrument of his own voice and stuck with it. And while it can wear you out and get a little tedious, I love this about him.
It's so great. It's so great. And this is, as a kid, I used to love the ridiculous stuff that would come out of his mouth. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, I've flown with the eagles and slithered with the snakes.
And then like the reference, talking about himself in the third person.
I'm the cream of the crop.
Exactly.
The cream. And he'd pull out a little creamer. Like, come on, man.
I'm going to tell you something right now. Cards stacked against the Macho Man Randy Savage in WrestleMania 3. Yeah, let me say it. Yeah, let me say it out loud. And let me point to the president of the World Wrestling Federation. The Macho Man Randy Savage is not happy with your decision. Yeah, I am the cream in the World Wrestling Federation. And there is no doubt about it.
I did a little bit of a nerdy deep dive on the word macho. All right, so macho, why did he land on that term, Macho Man? You can actually look up on Google Trends the appearance of certain words over time. Macho comes into vogue in the mid 70s and like rockets up in terms of its frequency of appearance in books. And it's
interesting.
It sort of like doesn't exist as much as you would think before 1960. Its etymology is rooted in Latin languages. Anyway, the reason I want to talk about this a little bit is it's a catchy name, Macho Man Randy Savage. How exactly is he macho? Other than the obvious, because there are ways in which he codes for a certain macho personality. He's protective, he's jacked, he's intense. But, the neon is a little bit contrary to our associations with macho in the 1980s.
Neon Speedos and fringe.
Right.
And glitter.
It's flamboyant, right? And I don't know that we would have called that macho at the time that he is. So I like that he's sort of taking a cartoonish version of this term. That is a really important term to sort of understand.
Like everything Randy did, he took it and he 10x'd it.
Yeah.
And he leaned in.
Totally. Well, okay. I think this will come up again, how we understand macho.
Absolutely.
What do you have for thing number 5?
The equalizer. So I have the Equalizer here.
The Denzel movie?
Yeah, the Denzel movie. And the reason I have this is it's one of the coolest stories I think I read. As a teenager, he got wind that these bullies were picking on a special needs kid.
Yeah.
And excuse my language, but he beat the shit out of these bullies, apparently.
Yeah.
And I love that. Like standing up for the person that really needs someone to stand up for him. And you see this in his life later on, how dedicated he is to giving back to sick kids, specifically children's hospitals and his charitable work there.
Yeah, this comes up a lot, that people say he's great with kids, which we'll get to this in a future category. He didn't have any children of his own, but that he would say, stay in school. And he was a role model of a sorts to kids. But he also, I mean, to your point, was a protector. That is heartwarming to see. I loved learning about that as to who he was.
And it kind of goes contrary to his character and his image, because he was, and when we use the word heel in wrestling, heel is like
the bad guy.
The bad guy. Hulk Hogan was the good guy.
Yeah.
Randy Savage was the bad guy.
I love that. And I think that that's a good one to call out, and that's a wonderful sort of thing, number 5. All right, so let's recap. So number 1, you said he was his own man. Number 2, I said freakishly athletic. Number 3, you said...
Doogie Howser.
Doogie Howser. Number 4, voice consciousness, especially as it relates to the term macho. And number 5, equalizer. Awesome list. Okay, let's take a break.
Craving your next action-packed adventure? Audible delivers thrills of every kind on your command, like Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, where a lone astronaut must save humanity from extinction, narrated with stunning intensity by Ray Porter. From electrifying suspense and daring quest to spine-tingling horror and romance in far-off realms, unleash your adventurous side with gripping titles that'll keep you guessing. Discover exclusive Audible originals, hotly anticipated new releases, and must-listen bestsellers that hook you from the first minute. Because Audible knows there's no greater thrill than the one that speaks to you. Discover what lies beyond the edge of your seat. Start your free 30-day trial at audible.com/WonderyUS. That's audible.com/WonderyUS.
Mochi Health is here to help you start your weight loss journey with caring, personalized support. Meet one-on-one with board-certified obesity doctors and registered dietitians who truly listen and understand your unique needs. Eligible patients can access affordable GLP-1 medications delivered right to their door each month. No insurance? No problem. Mochi Health accepts FSA and HSA, making care accessible and affordable. And with 24/7 customer service, you'll never feel alone on your path to better health. Get started with Mochi Health today. Take the free quiz at joinmochi.com and use code AUDIO40 at checkout for $40 off your first month of membership. That's joinmochi.com with promo code AUDIO40.
Okay, category 3, one love. In this category, Steve and I will each choose one word or phrase that characterizes this person's loving relationships. First, we will review the family life data. So Randy Savage had 2 marriages, one to Miss Elizabeth, and if you follow pro wrestling, she was actually involved in a lot of the storylines around his professional wrestling career. They met in 1982. They married in 1984. Randy was 32. Elizabeth was 24. They got divorced in 1992, so they were married about 8 years. It's a pretty complicated relationship because they both kind of got eaten up by the wrestling machinery and celebrity, basically. Okay, his second marriage is sort of interesting. Lynn Payne, they knew each other from high school and they reconnected in the 2000s. They married in 2010 when Randy was 57, she's 55, and he died a year later in this car accident. Other relevant info, we've already mentioned that Dad was a wrestler who trained him and his brother. And when Randy decided to commit to pro wrestling, his dad played an important role in guiding him into that process. But he never really forced it on him. He did force a certain kind of physical fitness regimen and created a household full of athletics. But his dad, while strict, was not committed to them going into the family business. All right, so what did you have for your one word or phrase?
The phrase that came to mind for this was iceberg right ahead.
Yeah.
To me, Randy Savage's personal life, love life outside of the ring, and even inside of the ring. I mean, I'll talk a little bit about Miss Elizabeth here. I mean, it was very, in some ways, it almost looked abusive.
Yeah.
The way he would talk to her on camera and boss her around. Go over here to this corner. Why are you talking to him? What? Don't talk to him. It was part of his character, part of the script, but
reality and behind the scenes, the wires seem to get crossed.
Right. There are people that talk about how outside of the ring he could also be very domineering and demanding and
macho in a not good way here.
Macho in a not a good way. So he had a very interesting relationship with women, and I want to talk about this because you mentioned Miss Elizabeth and you mentioned Lynn Payne.
Yeah.
In between there was this woman, Gorgeous George,
who was a former.
She was a stripper, and he met her at. I believe he met her at the strip club.
She's a lot younger.
And she's a lot younger. But Randy Savage, it seemed to me, had a lot of insecurities around women. He was always concerned that Miss Elizabeth, when he was married to her, was fooling around with other wrestlers behind his back. This was a regular thing.
Yeah.
He, at one point, Gorgeous George found out that he had planted...
Gorgeous George, we need to remind the listeners, is a woman.
Is a woman, yeah. Gorgeous George is a woman, girlfriend of Randy Savage after he was with Miss Elizabeth.
Yeah, he had a few girlfriends, but she was sort of the most prominent in a way.
But he put video cameras in her house.
Yeah, he's paranoid.
To spy on her. So he had a lot of insecurities with women, which is surprising to me because he's macho man.
I know.
Macho man Randy Savage.
Look, I think it's actually an important point because part of the reason I had wanted to do this episode in the first place is to talk about the word macho and use Randy Savage as a vehicle for having that conversation. And while there are maybe some elements of positive masculinity, there's also some real obvious signs of negative masculinity. And you see that in his interpersonal relationships.
It was
all the way up until the end. We don't actually have a whole bunch of information about this woman, Lynn, but around the mid-2000s, he quits dyeing his hair. It seems like he might have backed off the steroids because he's not as jacked, and he does seem to be entering a new phase of life. People describe it as like he really moved into a more Zen mode.
I have a lot more on this for later.
Okay, then we'll save it. All right, well, let me give you my one-word phrase. I wrote lifting to failure.
Ah.
You like it? All right.
Like that.
So this is a phrase that, bodybuilders use or people in the gym will use, that when you do an exercise to failure, right? You're not going to do just 10. You're going to go until you can't do it anymore. I think that this is a little bit of how he understood and experienced love. I think that there's a lot of intensity, there's no restraint, and he pushes until a thing kind of gives, until it fails. His relationship with Miss Elizabeth was iconic but tragic. It was marked by possessiveness, performance, and devotion taken to an unsustainable extreme, where at some point the relationship breaks. And this is not just a wrestling storyline. We talked about this a second ago. This was rooted in, I think, to your point about insecurity, a desperate need to hold on even as to use my metaphor, weight grew too heavy. I also think that this stems from his upbringing, that he grew up in a household that was shaped by wrestling and by masculine toughness. And I think emotional vulnerability was not modeled. It was about discipline and performance. And it's ultimately painful and unsustainable, even if it's very sincere.
I went back and I was watching footage of matches.
Mm-hmm.
And have you ever gone back and watched a movie that was filmed in the 90s and you watch it today and you think to yourself, ooh, I laughed really hard at that joke in the 90s and I'm not quite sure that's funny anymore.
This hasn't aged well.
Super funny. Hadn't aged well. That's kind of how I felt when I was watching some of the matches where he would order around Elizabeth and how he talked to her on camera.
Yeah.
It was disrespectful in a lot of
really
cases.
Not okay.
And you're right.
This does not hold up.
I kept filtering it through, and I know we're not supposed to do this, but it's hard not to filter it through the lens of today. And I was like,
Elizabeth, look into the videoscope and see how proud you are to be the manager of the Macho Man.
Well, I am proud to be the manager of the Macho Man.
When I think that your time is done, and I think that the spotlight should go on top of me. Yeah.
I think we have to say this doesn't hold up today, and then I think we have to try and place it in a context, and it shouldn't have held up, and that there are ways in which certain things are normalized. It was done so that the crowd hated him.
Yeah.
But that's not sort of the end of the story. There's still an element of normalizing a certain kind of personality, and especially one that sort of like is leading up to that line of violence.
Yeah, I think that's right.
And that's the thing that's dangerous here, right? And that's why it doesn't hold up, is that you see in some sense it is sort of staged violence, but even then the sort of tension and combustibility of it all is what really feels like not okay, and shouldn't have felt okay then, but feels even more not okay now. All right, so lifting to failure. That was my one love. Let's move on. Category 4, net worth. In this category, Steve and I will write down our numbers ahead of time. We'll talk a little bit about our reasoning. We'll then look up the net worth number in real time to see who's closest. And finally, we will place this person on the Famous and Gravy net worth leaderboard. There's some hints on this. I had to work to sort of not find out his net worth.
Same.
He was one of the more successful wrestlers. Wrestling is a bigger industry than you would imagine. It's not the same thing as like the NFL, but there's some data in the biography about it's, comparable to some of the other major sports like baseball, hockey, and basketball.
If you're a star.
If you're a star, which he was. There's also obviously Slim Jim. And the fact that he didn't have kids, there's no dependents, all of this had me at a high number, but not too high of a number. Was there anything else you factored in as you thought through his net worth?
I went all over the place with this one because I looked at, he had a 32-year wrestling career.
Yeah.
Independent, 73 to 85, WWF, 85 to 94. And then 95, he went to WCW, which is another wrestling entertainment company and promoter.
Right.
And he retired in 2004.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing on this,
and
I forget if we talked about this or not, he is notoriously a penny pincher.
Yeah, he's totally cheap. And this comes from his dad. Yeah.
My man saved his money.
Yeah.
And this is part of being around the wrestling business from a child. His father did a fantastic job managing finances because he had seen people blow through their life savings.
Wouldn't spend money on dinner as he's driving people around the Midwest.
There's a story of Macho Man playing a sold-out arena. The entertainment is leaving to go to their hotel, and Macho Man is sleeping in his car because he did not want to pay for the hotel.
All right, well, let's reveal. So, Steve Prada wrote down $15 million.
Michael Osborne wrote down $20 million. Okay,
we're in a similar zone. All right, Randy Savage's net worth was estimated to be around $8 million. That tracks. That's about right.
I'm not shocked by that. $8 million is nothing to...
No, of course that's a great number, but it's not insane.
I'm very curious where this puts him on the leaderboard.
Yeah, let's do that. You're actually I'm quite happy with this one. So at $8 million, he is that's the funnest part here. So this puts him in the 86th percentile. So this is definitely like the lower half of Famous and Gravy.
So is 86% of the Famous and Gravy topics or topical characters were higher?
But the company is fantastic.
Oh,
so
God.
Just above him at $9 million, Mean Gene Okerlund.
Yes. Yes.
But tied with him, you're going to love these names, Neil Armstrong, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Bill Buckner.
Yes!
That's the dinner table.
Billy B.
Somebody, a Supreme Court justice, the man who went to the moon, the man who some people thought cost the Red Sox the 86 World Series, although that turns out not to be true. I love that episode. It's one of our favorites. And Randy Savage. What a fantastic dinner table. Well done. $8 million. I'm at peace with it. I think that's a good number for Randy Savage. It's about right?
It's a beautiful number for the man.
All right, category 5, Little Lebowski Urban Achievers.
They're the Little Lebowski Urban Achievers.
Yeah, the Achievers.
Yes, and proud we are of all of them.
In this category, we each choose a trophy, an award, a cameo, an impersonation, or some other form of a hat tip that shows a different side of this person. What did you go with here?
I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I went with his charitable work.
Yeah.
That's not talked about a lot. You hear Macho Man Randy Savage, I think of Slim Jim and I think of professional wrestling.
Right.
He did an extraordinary amount of work with the All Children's Hospital in St. Petersburg, Florida. He spent time with sick kids, donated money, delivered gifts to patients,
I think he took his iconic status seriously on some level.
He took it very seriously.
Right? And this is where there's evidence of that.
And we started off the episode, I was talking about how as a kid, I think around like 7 or 8, I started, when I could, sneak some professional wrestling in and watch it. I just was thinking back, like, what a huge smile it would have put on my face if I were in the children's hospital and Macho Man Randy Savage came. To, like, it's a big deal.
That's a really good point.
Talk about putting a smile on a kid's face.
He is a obviously larger than life figure. This is the whole idea of professional wrestling. But I mean, one with that kind of like intensity, is this even a real human? And actually, you do hear stories about those kinds of celebrity encounters of people saying he took a minute with me and it meant everything in the world.
Yeah, Make-A-Wish is one of the foundations he was big into.
Yeah. He's a good Make-A-Wish candidate.
To benefit the Make-A-Wish Foundation, we should do anything that we can. Playing in Hollywood, November the 17th, the hottest party of the year. Oh, yeah, the hottest party of the year. Macho Man Randy Savage says November 17th, playing at Hollywood. The Make-A-Wish Foundation is important, G. Everybody back it and do it for them, Yeah,
and I go back to Randy Poffo. Randy Poffo, by all accounts, was a kind, compassionate gentleman. And I think his charitable work with children allowed him to be Macho Man and Randy Poffo.
Yeah, it's sort of the best use of this character, right? And the best use of what we want of athletes, you know? I love that one, Steve. All right. Well, this came up in the quiz. I went with the first Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire. I went back and rewatched this. So Sam Raimi was the director, right? People who don't know, Sam Raimi did Evil Dead 2. I had forgotten this part. Bruce Campbell from Evil Dead 2 fame, who's a kind of cult figure, is the announcer for the wrestling match. Randy Savage is pitted against Tobey Maguire as he's just discovering his superpowers, and he's in a wrestling cage match.
Hey, listen. Some kind of mistake. I didn't sign up for a cage match. Hey, unlock the thing. Take the chain off.
Hey, Freak Show, you're going nowhere. I got you for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of playtime.
Here's why I chose this for my category. One is that Randy Savage is not wearing his sunglasses in this cameo, and you rarely see his eyes, right? It was sort of, you actually don't recognize him because you see his eyes initially. A lot of people talked about that, how when they saw the movie, they forgot him. The other thing, though, is that there is a kind of nearest neighbor quality to professional wrestlers and superheroes. There's something kind of perfect about having this superhero-like character in a cage match with an actual superhero.
What was his name in the cage match? Buzzsaw. That's what it was. Yeah.
It's perfect.
Buzzsaw.
And he's still, all the behind-the-scenes work, apparently, he, took it seriously, took time with the crew to give autographs, and was, all in on the commitment to being on this movie.
I love that.
That was my little Lebowski. All right, let's take one more break.
Bombas makes the most comfortable socks, underwear, and T-shirts.
Warning, Bombas are so absurdly comfortable you may throw out all your other clothes.
Sorry, do we legally have to say that?
No, this is just how I talk, and I really love my Bombas.
They do feel that good. And they do good, too. One item purchased equals one item donated.
To feel good and do good, go to bombas.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com/Wondery and use code WONDERY at checkout.
Instacart is on a mission to have you not leave the couch this basketball season, because between the pregame rituals and the postgame interviews, it can be difficult to find time for everything else. So let Instacart take care of your game day snacks or weekly restocks and get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes, because we hear it's bad luck to be hungry on game day. So download the Instacart app today and enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Service fees apply for 3 orders in 14 days, excludes restaurants.
Category 6, words to live by. In this category, Steve and I each choose a quote. These are either words that came out of this person's mouth or was said about them. What did you have here? What did you go with?
July 13th, 1992. Macho Man, guest on Arsenio Hall. Arsenio Hall says,
Macho Man ever cried?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Uh-huh. It's okay for macho men to show every emotion available right there, because I've cried 1,000 times, I'm going to cry some more. But I've soared with the eagles, and I've slithered with the snakes, and I've been everywhere in between. And I'm going to tell you something right now. There's one guarantee in life, and that there are no guarantees, yeah. And understand this. Yeah. Nobody likes a quitter. Nobody said life was easy, so if you get knocked down, take the standing 8 count, get back up, and fight again. And you're a macho maniac.
Now, I picked that mainly because...
This is really good, Steve.
Because I know for myself growing up, as a product of the 80s and 90s, it was still a time where men weren't exactly encouraged to be emotionally in touch with their feelings.
Dude, I still struggle to cry. I cry sometimes, and I cry a little bit more easily now.
It's actually, you know when I cry?
Do you struggle to cry?
Shit, if I want to cry, you know what I throw on? A Disney movie.
Really?
They make me lose it every single time.
Really?
I mean, Disney movies make me Disney and Pixar have my number.
Yeah.
And that movie Inside Out 2, I mean, we're going way off track now. But
not really.
That movie
No,
Inside,
I don't think we are.
That movie Inside Out 2, I can remember watching it. And I mean, towards the end, I just broke down and cried when she's starting to get all her emotions back. But it was because it started to make me think about when I was that age, I wish someone could have told me, it's going to be okay. You are all these things. You're not just kind. You're also selfish.
Yeah.
You're also this. It's okay to be all these things.
Yeah.
But for someone like Macho Man to say, I've cried 1,000 times.
It's surprising.
It's a very different message than anyone else was putting out there at that time.
Totally.
And to hear it from Macho Man is pretty cool.
I love that you found that. I can't believe that exists. I asked you, do you cry a second ago? I'll say this. When I am with other people, when I'm in front of my children, when I'm with my wife, it is still hard for me to cry in front of other people.
Same.
And I think that is just the way I grew up, right? I do think not only should it be okay, but it's almost important to show that it's okay. And that's what this is. So that is awesome. Nice find, Steve. All right. Mine's not nearly as good as that. Mine, I've been looking at it now.
I'm sure it is. Let's hear it.
He just says, I'm the undisputed king of the squared circle.
Yes. Yes. See, but I love that because that's also Macho Man. He's all of it, dude. He cries 1,000 times and he's the king of the square circle.
The undisputed king.
Undisputed king.
Yeah, and there's tons of these where he says something that's like, that's nonsense. That doesn't mean anything. But he says it with such intensity and sincerity that you're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay, I believe you.
Exactly.
Square circle is real.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. Great words to live by. All right, let's move on. Category 7, man in the mirror. This category is fairly simple. Did this person like their reflection? Yes or no? This is not about beauty, but rather a question of self-confidence versus self-judgment. This is an interesting one. Okay, so we talked a little bit about steroids and the sort of risk and possibility of body dysmorphia. Certainly there's a professional burden. He's wanting to extend his career, and this is a culture that makes it okay. And let's just assume that he's jacked on steroids because the body makes it seem pretty obvious. There's also, I think, some real insecurity as evidenced by his interpersonal relationships. And there's even to your first point about he chose to be this character, that almost feels like a decision you make because the truer, deeper, real self inside is something that you might want to hide from. All of that kind of leads into the no. At the same time, the amount of confidence he has, the voice consciousness, the willingness to get in front of the camera, the body awareness, whether it's his freakish athletic qualities, sort of point to, yes, he does like his reflection. So there's a strong case to be made on either side. Where would you go with this?
I liked hearing you talk through that. I painted a little bit outside of the lines on this one.
Okay.
And hopefully it's okay.
You have to choose an answer. This is the one category I'm going to make. It's a binary.
I think Randy's view in the mirror would have been different depending on the period of life he was in. He went through so many different transformations that to say he did or he didn't like it, for me, is too hard to do because in his 20s, when he's chasing his dream of becoming a baseball player, of course he's proud of who he looks in the mirror, I think.
I agree.
He's working towards his dream. He loves what he sees in the mirror. Breaks his arm. Now he's in professional wrestling. You move through that period. He's losing his hair.
Yeah.
He's on steroids. He's doing drugs. He's spying on
Dating
his ex-girlfriends.
Half his age or strippers.
Does he love himself in the mirror then? Probably not. But then, and this is where I was alluding to earlier, he reaches this beautiful point in his life when he
reconnects with his high school
he
sweetheart.
Stops dyeing his hair.
Yeah.
he starts to accept his age and who he is. And he's calm. And he can look himself in the mirror at that point and say, look at all this cool stuff I did with my life.
You know what's
and
so
I'm comfortable with who I am right now. That's what I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's right, Steve. What's so interesting about that answer is that we do force you have to make a yes or a no case. The life he lives in the middle when he decides to be Randy Savage from the beginning after the baseball career up until letting that identity go shortly before his death, that's what we know him for. That's the area of life where he's most likely to be a no. Everything outside of that is most likely to be a yes. So yes, this is a particularly hard one. I think I made up my mind. I'm going to go yes, because I do think at some point he does shed the identity to some extent, and he knows that there is a deeper, truer self in there that he's tried to actualize for most his life.
If the question is, what was his view of himself in the mirror towards the end of his life? I think yes.
In some.
In some.
Yeah.
He's looking in the mirror. I'd be pretty proud of all the amazing things that I had done with my life.
Then let's go yes and yes.
Yes
I like
and yes.
It. All right. Next category, cocktail, coffee, or cannabis. This is where we ask which one would we most want to do with our dead celebrity. What do you got here, Steve?
This was a tough one. We have 3 choices. In keeping with the beauty of the show, I'm going to choose one of the choices here, which it would be coffee.
Okay.
The reason why I'm choosing coffee, though, is because I can't choose cocaine and steroids.
Sure.
Because ripping a line of cocaine, shooting myself up with some steroids, and then going for a workout at the gym with Randy Savage. I want to do that and go to the gym with Randy Savage, throw some weights around, and have him tell me.
Have like a killer workout.
Be like, dude, put me through one of the workouts that you did on the regular. Let's do this.
Yeah.
And let's talk about how and why you gravitated towards this workout and what you loved about athletics and what fires you up, like
and bodybuilding.
And bodybuilding, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But coffee because
coffee because
I want him stimulated. I want my Randy Savage stimulated.
Yeah. All right, it's funny. I went in a similar direction, slightly different. I'm going cannabis. What I want actually is to hang out after a good workout, because it is actually with the right friends. Working out and pushing yourself is actually kind of awesome.
It's great.
Right? And if you work out with somebody who studies the body and is attentive to good form and knows the muscle groups and says this one's going to, burn and hurt and all that, like you will push yourself harder. And I like that competitive experience. I also like the afterburn.
Yes.
And so what I'm picturing with the cannabis is I had a friend growing up who had this back room where we had like black lights, and I'm picturing hitting a bong with black lights, with the neon kind of glowing and red. Oh, do you feel that in your triceps or whatever?
Tassels swinging.
Yeah, exactly. And just and like that chill downtime of like I worked my body hard and now I am relaxing and listening. Kind of in the afterglow of a good workout.
I totally dig that.
You see that?
I love that one. I totally did. I could slide into that one easily. Yeah, I like that one.
Snap into a black light bong.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. All right. I think we've arrived. The final category, the Vanderbeek, named after James Vanderbeek, who famously said in Varsity Blues,
I don't want your life.
In that Varsity Blues scene, James makes a judgment that he does not want a certain kind of life based on just a few characteristics. So here, Steve and I will form a rebuttal to anyone skeptical of how Randy Savage lived. We will start with a counter-argument for why James has a point with why you would not want this life. We didn't go into deep detail because I think we don't know all that much. There are definitely some signs of abuse. There's definitely some signs of domestic strife. I suspect he got himself into real trouble. I think he struggled not just with women, but also with friendships. The friendship with Hogan is fraught, although they do make peace towards the end. I do think that there's some real internal conflict and strife. All of that points to I would not want this life. If there's something else you'd add to that, please do, but let's move towards making the case for why you would want this life.
So the point for why my counter to that.
Yeah, let's put some ideas together. Yeah.
Let's talk about Randy Poffo.
Yeah.
He, by all accounts, had a healthy, somewhat busy, and supported relationship with his parents during childhood.
Yeah, I think he was loved.
And he and his brother thick as thieves, loved each other.
Yeah.
Had great relationships there.
His brother goes above and beyond when he talks about him, about like, it's not necessarily emotionally available, but it's absolutely supportive.
He had loving relationships with his family, and they loved him back.
Yeah.
And he had a beautiful childhood.
And helped to support his dreams.
Yeah. Supportive. Yeah. And he loved athletics. He dedicated himself to baseball first and then to wrestling. He took risks.
Yeah.
And he stumbled. And he got back up, like his quote earlier with Arsenio Hall. He got back up.
Mm-hmm.
He became an icon for mega processed food sticks.
Yeah.
Like, he is an icon.
What a dream.
He went out and not saying it was a good album, but he put out a hip hop album.
He did put out a hip hop album.
He did. He packed so much.
Yeah.
Into what sadly became a shortened life.
I think I want to break some of these things out, because I'm hearing 2 or 3, maybe 4 ideas in here. Number one, loving, supportive family that nurtured his dreams.
Yeah.
Number 2, I do think that there's something you had to say about commitment to athletics and fitness. Yes, maybe there's steroids, but there is a sort of like, we are given on this earth a body that can be an instrument. It even gets to my voice's instrument idea. How are we going to use and play that instrument is a vital part of what it means to go through this world, right? And that is wonderful. I think number 3, when you talk about his baseball career, we didn't really go into the depths of it. When he found out he was never going to make the majors, he went home and broke all his baseball bats, and yet picked himself up. And this is your point number 1, I think is the most important thing in a way. He chose a new path, and he chose a character, and he chose a way through it, that he became in control of his own destiny. And number 4, he's a symbol. He's an important icon, and a problematic one in places, certainly as it comes to violence and abuse, but in other ways, a seriously inspirational one. I love that quote about him saying it's okay to cry. I think he is, not deliberately necessarily, but he is pushing on the question of how do we understand what it means to be macho and what it means to be masculine, which is the whole reason I wanted to have you in on this episode. So I mean, those are 4 really good reasons.
It's 4 really good reasons. That in the 80s and 90s, you would be hard pressed to find someone that did not know who Macho Man Randy Savage was.
Yeah.
He was that well known. There's this idea that you don't really ever die until someone utters your name for the last time.
Right.
You continue to live on, right?
Yeah.
So if immortality is someone's name, someone's image, and their words forever being referenced, Randy Savage kind of achieved immortality. People still say, oh, yeah.
Yeah. He lives on.
He lives on.
I think with that, James Vanderbeek, I am Macho Man Randy Savage, and you want my life. Famous and Gravy listeners, if you enjoyed this episode about Macho Man Randy Savage, and you've got somebody in your life who could use a bit of entertainment, maybe a little bit of fun or some reflection, and you think they'd enjoy it, you've got the phone in your hand right now. Share this episode with them. It helps us to grow. Speed round, plugs for past shows. Steve, if listeners enjoyed this episode with Macho Man Randy Savage, what's an episode from the Famous and Gravy archives that they might also enjoy?
I'd have to pick 2.
Okay.
The first one would be George Carlin. As someone that grew up in the New Jersey, New York area, my father, huge George Carlin fan. I can remember George Carlin on HBO and how the man just said what was on his mind.
Yep.
I loved that episode. That, and I have a very soft spot in my heart for Mr. Rogers.
Yeah,
and
the Fred Rogers episode.
The Fred Rogers episode was terrific.
Thanks, man. All right. I actually really like Fred Rogers as a contrast to Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah.
There's an interesting sort of compare and contrast element there. All right. So episode 100, Divine Neighbor, Fred Rogers, and episode 92, Acerbic Comedian, George Carlin. I'm going to plug the episode with Hank Aaron. Episode 49, Hammer Time. I don't know why, but there were some elements that came up in this conversation that had me thinking a little bit about transcending sports and what it means to achieve excellence. I mean, I'd like to think that the home run king before Barry Bonds and before the steroid era is worth a listen. So episode 49, Hammer Time, Hank Aaron. Here is a little preview for the next episode of Famous and Gravy. Her institution was forced to justify its existence in the face of often skeptical public attention and scrutiny.
Her institution? Wow.
Institution.
Sounds really important.
Famous and Gravy listeners, we love hearing from you. If you want to reach out with a comment, question, or to participate in our opening quiz, email us at hello@famousandgravy.com. In our show notes, we include all kinds of links, including to our website and our social channels. Famous and Gravy is created by Amit Kapoor and me, Michael Osborne. Thank you so much to Steve Prada for sitting in on this episode. It was produced by Evan Scherer with original music by Kevin Strang. Thanks, and see you next time. Follow Famous and Gravy on the Wondery app. You can listen to more episodes early and ad-free right now by joining Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. Before you go, tell us about yourself by completing a short survey at Wondery.com/survey.
At Hotels.com, we know some travelers crave an ocean breeze. Others don't want to deal with sand. And oftentimes, those two people end up together. Compare properties side by side to find yourself poolside, oceanside, and still in a relationship. Find your perfect somewhere with Hotels.com.